from the outside? Tammy, is that it? Everybody's in here now? Yeah. Okay. My name's Carol Ty, and on behalf of Liz Kerr, President of the Catbackers, I want to thank, and of course the rest of the Catbacker Board, thank you so much for being here this evening for our special event. And you goes Pearl. And now I got to go by notes. The Catbackers was founded in 1997 by Mary Barnett, who was Coach Barnett's wife, and Jean Yale, combination. And initially, Jean also served at the Northwestern's Donor Relations and Special Events Coordinator for 22 years, so we appreciate having all her expertise. Is she not here anymore? Oh, there she is. Hi, Jean. Yay! Originally, Catbackers was created as a group of women and joining together to learn more about Northwestern University football. And it provided a venue for the education of women in the areas of strategies and college football operations. One of the highlights of our meetings was the opportunity to meet a selected number of the players, and I don't know if any of you guys joined us at any of the Catbackers or not.
Dean did.
Dean, thank you. And so we kind of learned about their future plans, what they were studying, and how they came to be at Northwestern. And it usually wasn't for the snow and the cold weather. The main area of support has been devoted to football, but in recent years the Catbackers are now reaching out to the other athletic teams, men's and women's basketball, and we hope to continue on to other fields of the athletics. Kathy Dunlap, another fellow Catbacker board member, is going to introduce our moderator and go for them.
Good evening, football fans. We're so thrilled that you're here. There's a couple other people we want to acknowledge in the audience. Sitting in the back, Daniel Solo, head of the Wildcat Fund. I'm sure you all know him, but if you don't, you need to talk to him. Yay! Get your money in. It does good things. Tammy Walker. Where are you, Tammy Walker? Tammy Walker is our rock. She is our staffer who does everything. We couldn't do this without her. And someone who is not here, but who I want to acknowledge, Jacob Schmidt, the Director of Player Development in the football office, who's a new daddy. And he has worked with me on this program for 4 months, so acknowledge him in his absence. He's very busy with the baby. That baby got announced on TV. If you were watching on Saturday for the football practice, they literally announced the birth of the baby on television. That was very cool. I'm thrilled to have our panel tonight, but I'm also thrilled to have you in the audience, we the civilians, who plan our tailgates in the off-season, who watch all sorts of things, so you'll understand my nerdy story, how we got here. Last year, 2016, I was in beautiful Palm Springs at a conference. And one day, my conference got out early. And so I thought, I'll go out in the sunshine. But instead, I came back to my room and I said, nope, can't go out. The Combine is on TV, the NFL Combine. And why was that important to me? Because Dean Lowry and Danny Vitale were at Catbackers in the fall of 2012. That's when we first met them. And they were at this combine, and they were positively killing it. I don't know if you know this, very few people seem to, but Danny and Dean finished first and second in the combined scores in that combine, which is absolutely astounding. That's just an amazing feat. The champions of the combine. So I sat there in my room and I wondered, how did we get there? I know we met these guys in Catbackers, and we've had people in Catbackers talking about nutrition, and I watched Danny by chance get recruited by Lee Steinberg, his eventual agent, but how did we get there? So I brought the idea to Catbackers. What happens at Catbackers is we sit around at our board meetings and we think of what to do for programs. So it's not just those of us who are up here, but it's the board. And we had more ideas than we can present to you tonight. Benita Painter had a really good idea about what role do the parents play in this. Several people asked about agents. So like I said, more time and space than we have tonight to do this. And because it's such an intricate topic, we needed a pro. Not just a pro, but somebody who's a double pro. So Carol and I took him to lunch because you all know who he is, and we wanted to find out some more secrets about him. Did you know that he grew up in the south suburbs of Chicago for the first 3 years of his life? I like that. I'm originally a South Sider. And did you know, you all know he was a Bear, right? But did you know he was a Bear before he was a Bear? He played for the Cal Bears. I urge you to look up what it was like, the offense that he played on at Cal, because there's lots and lots of records that exist. He was an All-American. This will astound you. He played in 4 postseason All-Star games. 4. He was also on a Bob Hope Christmas show. That is one of my favorite secrets about our moderator. And then in 1977, he was drafted in the first round, number 15, by the Chicago Bears. His agent, Lee Steinberg. Before Danny Vitale, before Jerry Maguire, he had this guy as a client. He played 83 games, started 83 games for the Bears, won the Brian Piccolo Award, which, as any Bear fan knows, is totally dear to our heart. He had a career-ending injury in 1983, but he stayed in Chicago. He has run several interesting businesses, and then he migrated over to radio. So this is where we get his second version of pro. Pro in football, pro in radio. And then he came to us, where we know him as a color announcer for the Wildcats, including he has several successful businesses, an industrial light project that he works on. He also has bad habits, but I won't reveal them because he'll probably reveal them himself. But here's the good habit. He is going to be a grandfather for the second time. So please give a big welcome to Ted Albrecht.
Introduction like that kind of makes me feel like a baby who wet its diapers. Doesn't show on the outside, but the inside gives me a nice warm feeling. Thank you. So my first responsibility is to introduce our panel, and I'm going to start off with Afadia Denabo. By the way, it took me 3.5 years to learn how to pronounce his name, and now he's leaving, so I have no one to impress. But anyway, 6'3", 265 from Centerville, Ohio, came in at 215 pounds, now is leaving at 265. If my math is correct, that's 10 pounds a year. That's about perfect, Tommy, 10 pounds a year. 265, gained 50 pounds in 5 years. Career total is 49 games. He's played in 61 total tackles. TFL is 26 and a half. Sacks 23 and a half. 14 quarterback harassments. Now let me tell you, harassment is a very good stat. It's not how many sacks you get, but it's how you disrupt the pocket. That's what Buddy Ryan used to say. Make him nervous. So he did that a lot. Last season, first team All Big Ten. Also ranked with 23 and a half sacks in his career. That's ranked second in school history. Also led the Big Ten with 10 sacks a season ago. And of course, we all remember what he did against Iowa in that win, 38-31. We had 4 sacks in the game. He backed it up the following week at Michigan State. Big win, 54-40 for the Cats. He had 2 more sacks. He was sack happy last year. And he also picked up a couple against Minnesota and Illinois in the final 2 games. Afadi Adenabo, would please welcome. Now, I barely remember this guy, but I will tell you, he has a very interesting bio. Tommy Christian. Tommy used to be a linebacker here for Coach Barnett in the early 90s. In fact, his senior year, Coach Fitz was an incoming freshman. During his playing career at NU, he was the top Iron Cat. It's a very prestigious award, combination of speed, strength, explosiveness, and stamina, and he won that award. After graduating with a degree in engineering, he was drafted in 91, 12th round by the Bears, 310 overall. After playing for the Bears, the Panthers, and the Atlanta Falcons in 97, he also had some amazing stats.
Sorry, that's Bob. I'm sorry,
This is Bob?
No, up until the point of being drafted. My brother was drafted.
Yes, well, I knew Brother Bob too.
Yeah, no, Bob, yes.
So this is all Bob? Well, you got an engineering degree. I saw that in...
No, it was all me until the drafted part.
Oh.
My brother was drafted.
Oh, screw that. His brother would never got drafted. This is Tommy I'm talking
11 years
about.
and I never... I wanted to start working for an honest job. I was an engineer.
Well, I had multiple websites up. I had the NFL, I had NU, I had all this stuff. So, okay, so your brother had a great career. He played for 11 years. I was going to say, it's a great career. But by the way,
I as much as I wanted to let you keep going,
okay, well then, I'll tell you this. Here's an important part. He started his sports performance career at NU as an assistant director of strength and conditioning in the year 2000. I got that
yes,
right.
That's correct.
So we're all legit
Skip
from
all
here.
that NFL stuff.
Yeah, okay. Tommy now is the founder and owner of TC Boost, a sports development and training program. I think this is where it gets serious. Over the last 15 years, Tommy has trained more than 600 D1 athletes, 150 players preparing for the NFL draft, 4 NFL Pro Bowl players, 40 other professional athletes, and 5 other major sports. Pairing his extensive athletic background with his coaching experience, with his degree in engineering, I got that right. Tommy has a uniquely and analytical approach to developing performance in athletes of all ages, from high school to Olympians. Very impressive. Please welcome, not Bobby, but Tommy. You know the 11th commandment is thou shalt not take thyself too seriously. So you got to be able to laugh at yourself. Our last panel is, of course, Dean Lowry, number 94. We know him best. He was drafted in the 4th round by the Green Bay Packers, 137 overall in 216. Became the first defensive end from Northwestern to be drafted, other than Corey Wooten did, by the Bears in 2010, 109 overall. Dean has had 33 starts for the Wildcats. Career numbers, 134 total tackles, 83 solos, 31 and a half TFLs. That's huge. 12 and a half sacks, 3 INTs, and 1 pick six. Hello, baby. I thought at Duke you were going to go all the way with that one, man, but you were overheated. It was hot.
He had an angle on me, the quarterback.
He did. Some other nice things about our guest, Dean. Second team All Big Ten his senior year, and this is an amazing feat right here. Set the school single game record and tied 6th in the Big Ten, 6th best, 6 TFLs, and a win at Nebraska in 2015. I remember that game.
So fun.
Was one of 4 true freshmen to play his freshman year, made all Big Ten freshman team, and he's from Rockland, Bowling. Please welcome Dean Lowry. Okay, so I think I need to tell you a little bit, since we're talking about the draft. I want to give you a little history about the draft. Pro football, prior to 1936, players did not have a draft. It was a free-for-all. They could sign from wherever they wanted. However, on February 8, 1936, that's when they took place the first NFL draft. The first player chosen was Jay Berwinger. Who did he play for? College? Right, University of Chicago. And who drafted him? Philly, and he was traded the very next day. There you go. By the way, he never played either. They had 9 rounds in 1936. In 1937, they went to 10. In 39, they went to 20. The methodology of the draft, though, has remained the same almost every single year since 1936. It's pretty simple. The weaker team picks first, and the first team picks last. We call it parity. In the 1930s, the drafted of players was hearsay, print media, and nothing more than rudimentary evidence. Like a person who was watching a running back at the Army Notre Dame game in 1933 might have told some person at the press box who told some coach that, oh, by the way, I saw this guy play, you should draft him in the first round. That is how they used to evaluate talent back in the 30s. However, that all changed because in the 40s, the first full scout was finally hired on the Cleveland Browns in the 40s. So here's what we're going to do today over the next hour, tonight. We're going to talk about everything leading up to the draft. We're going to talk about the draft, and then we're going to talk about what happens immediately when you're a rookie and you're going into your first camp. So the topics are, and we're going to hold our questions to the end, so remember if you have a question, early departures from college, picking an agent, all-star games, pre-combine prep, NFL combine, pro day, the draft, free agency, OTAs, okay? So that's and by the way, if anybody wants to know the draft order, I just happened to print that out. And by the way, that is accurate. Okay? So let's talk about an interesting thing that happened. We had a player come out early. Of course, Anthony Walker came out early, and there is what they call a college advisory committee. So if you want to know where you sit with your draft value, it's either first round, second round, or stay in school. And both of those players, Godwin and Anthony, went to that process with Coach Fitz and Cody. And have any of you here ever thought about doing that, going out early?
No, I didn't do that. Yeah, my big year is my senior year, so I really had no idea up until that last year if I was going to pursue the NFL or get a job after college. So I was in that position after my junior year, but Anthony and Godwin obviously were. They had better junior years and sophomore years for Anthony to have that opportunity.
Yeah, I was in the same position, just like Dean. If you would ask me going into my senior year that I was going to have the year that I had, I'd be like, you're pulling my hair, but but yeah, it's just kind of the same thing with Dean.
Tommy, have you seen players that come through your facility that maybe went out early or were thinking about going out early, going into that final year, their junior year, and how that worked?
I actually, in the years of training, I think I had two guys that came out early. One was before Anthony. One was Richard Mendenhall, and he was a first-round draft pick, in Illinois. And Richard did really, I think that was probably a good decision for him, And then I had another player who, Robert Johnson, played tight end for Auburn, and he went out early, and he didn't even get drafted, which, so I'd say that was a bad decision, And I hope it's a great decision for Anthony.
Yeah, so really, some of the influence that's going on right now is the agent, because the agent is trying to promote the athlete to come out early. It's one less year you can get injured. It's one less year you're in college football, and it puts one more year onto your pro career. Because everybody, they have a minimum wage for rookies. So once you get to that second contract, that's when you get the big money. If you can maintain your health, because it's only a lifespan of 3 years. So the idea is that there's a lot of pressure. I'm not saying it's a lot of pressure, but there is some pressure now of coming out early because you can then make that second contract come true. And that's where you kick in for the big cash. So second thing is picking an agent. And you are right, I'm on page 68, 69, and 70. I was Lee Steinberg's 5th customer, and his first customer was Steve Barkowski, first player chosen in the draft, and he was 2 years ahead of me at Cal. And of course that movie was based on his life. It's very interesting to be with Lee when he was young, and never wore socks, drove a Pinto, and always wore jeans, and every GM in the league loved him. He was a really, really solid guy. And so there's a huge process that goes into picking an agent. It's a very important one, and all of us here except Tommy. So let's start with you first, Afadi, because you haven't been drafted yet. And you're going to need some advice. Tell us about your process.
So kind of for me, the guy I'm with is Mike Boyer. He works with GL Sports. Their biggest client is Joe Flacco. So he kind of gave me a phone call after that Iowa game. So I wonder why. But so like for me, so I came down between like 4 or 5 agencies, and the reason why I chose him was kind of like the first thing to trust. Like I spoke to him like once a week, and he seemed like someone I could trust on. And another thing, I was looking through his clients. One thing about it was like I was one of the few defensive linemen he had it. That was part of his clients. So a lot of times when an agent's talking to NFL teams, he's like, "Oh, these are my guys. If you need a defensive lineman, these are my guys." But I know for a fact that they don't have much D linemen, so that kind of helps me. Gives me a lot of leverage there. So it's just kind of. Just trust. Things kind of worked out well, and he just kind of gave me a chance.
Yeah, I went with Priority Sports in Chicago, and after the Nebraska game, my big game senior year, they contacted me. So it's just kind of funny how after your big games, then they come around. But and they've had a lot of Northwestern guys in the past, like Corey Wooden, Trevor Simeon. I think Luis Castillo. So I think already with that, it kind of established a level of credibility with them, knowing that they had guys that I reached out to and talked very highly of them and just their ability to promote you and just negotiate and things like that. So, but also I think it's very important to sort of share the vision with your agents or where they see you playing at, what position, what kind of scheme they see you at, who they know, like what their experience has been. And for example, I'm with like two guys, and Mike McCartney and Kyle Doan, and Mike McCartney worked as a scout for the Bears for many years, so he established connections with GMs over the years, so he knows them. So I think he can call them and say, I have this guy, I have that guy. But also I think looking at their client base too, so you want to see what guys that you're similar to, so if a spot opens up at my position, they want to sell, one guy they have. If they have numerous guys, it could be kind of like, all right, well, do we give the GM this guy or that guy to sell, and just sort of that. So I think just having that combination of somebody who has good experience, but also somebody that shows you a lot of attention and really, works for you.
Tom, have you seen a lot of chatter with your D1 guys about, or guys that are already in the league that are talking about agents, or I'm switching, or I'm looking, or how's the chatter go at your place?
I mean, I don't get to really talk with them that much about it until like right before. If guys are early on, kind of end of their last year playing, like you know this agent, what do you think about them? And and a lot of my experience, not only from professionally, but also like seeing my brother go through 11 years in the NFL, and I think my belief is that players create opportunities for themselves. I think sometimes there's too much emphasis on an agent. I don't know. I'd be interested to know your opinions, but I feel like it's really a lot of times the player, and I have seen times I've worked with agents before. Brandon Carr, who's the starting corner for the Cowboys, and about 3 years ago signed I think a $51 million deal, and I trained him for the draft, and he was an undrafted. He was drafted in the 5th round. He wasn't a combine invite, and he wasn't highly recruited by agents, so he signed with an agent, paid for all of his training, really served him really well, and he got to the point where he's ready to get that payday, and he fired that agent, and he hired some guy who has a lot of other guys like him, and so I felt like, for that agent, I was like, that, he invested in him, he helped him, and then when it came time for the agent to get paid off, he got fired and, went and did something else, so it's interesting.
Yeah, it's always been kind of a dirty industry. It's always had their laundry hanging out there, and I back in 1977, the stories were awful. So there's some still out there. The next one is All-Star Games, and I have a real. I was crazy to play, the East, West, North, South Shrine Game, the Hula Bowl, the Japan Bowl, all within 6 weeks. And by the way, I came home about 400 pounds, drinking and eating, and the draft was coming up. And think about the risk that I was taking. I had no clue. But the Senior Bowl offered me guaranteed $7,500 if I would come to the Senior Bowl. And I said, man, I'm going to go to the Hula Bowl. If we win the game, I get $7,500. And I said, and I'm going to be in Hawaii. So I said, why would I want to come to Mobile, Alabama? And I said, by the way, what are you offering Tony Dorsett, Heisman Trophy winner in my class? Because if you're offering me 75, you got to be offering him at least 25. But I want to talk about this because two players sat out, two predominant players, McCaffrey from Stanford, Fournette from LSU, both sat out of their bowl games to get ready for the combine and the draft. And I'd like to get just, your overall take on All-Star Games and et cetera.
Yeah, so for Christian McCaffrey and Leonard Fournette, I believe they sat out their two bowl games. So kind of my outlook on that is I can't, as a being a Division I player, I can understand where they're coming from. But kind of like if that was ever me, or if I was at Northwestern, like we don't have much, like playing the bowl game is very significant for us, especially through our history, and it's kind of your last time to strap it up to your brother. So I could never envision myself doing that. But then going back to the whole All-Star game, so like mine was kind of a weird situation. So after Pitt, I'm like, all right, had a good year. I was first team All Big Ten, so yeah, I'm waiting for a phone call for the All-Star game, and somehow I never got invited to an All-Star game. So I'm thinking like, oh man. I remember calling Dean about it. I was like, because Dean played in the Shrine Games. Like, yeah, dude, I haven't gotten invited for an All-Star game. Like, that's kind of weird, man. So I'm thinking, oh, why get invited for the NFL Combine? And he's like, probably not, man. But yeah, so it's kind of a weird thing. So with All-Star games, from my understanding, you have the Senior Bowl. And the Senior Bowl is really like guys that are first 2-round grades. Then after that, you have the Shrine Game, and you get the PA, right? The PA? NFL PA game. And that's really more for, that's kind of really for more chairmen, and they kind of get to select who they want, or do they want more of a preference of SEC guys and things like that. So at the end of the day, it didn't really make that much of a difference, and I actually got to stay at home and train with Tommy.
Yeah, I think with the two guys that skipped their bowl games with McCaffrey and Fournette, it's kind of hard to judge that because I feel like we put so much pressure on going to like very good bowl games as teammates or the media, just everything. And those two guys, their teams didn't have quite good of years. You know, they didn't play in the BCS game, and they played in more of mid-tier bowls. So I don't think it's quite fair to people to say, oh, you know, it's not right for them to play in a bowl game because. I think if you see like Alabama going 8-4, you see, teams Clemson going, 7-4, whatever. I think you'll see more of that. Just guys not playing as important bowls. So that's just how it is. And at the end of the day, I think those guys provide for their family. So I think it's one of those things where it's their choice. And I think college football is temporary, but a lot of times the money can help them and their family, and especially if they come from difficult circumstances. So I don't think I really put too much blame on them. But so I went to the East-West Shrine game down in Tampa, had a great experience there. I met a lot of good friends. It's cool to compete against and make friends with guys that you went against through the years, Big Ten guys, all Pac-12 guys, SEC guys. So I still talk to a lot of those guys today and just follow them through the NFL and see how they're doing and just follow their success. So it was a pretty cool experience for me.
Tommy, I want to go right into the pre-combine prep. This is exactly your sweet spot. So the big thing is there's only about 30 days following the national championship game in college football, and there's about 60 days plus available from the very last conference game you play around Thanksgiving. Mm-hmm. So all of a sudden now that combine comes up right after the Super Bowl in early Feb. So you don't really have a lot of time. I mean, especially if you got your aches and pains or an injury or something, or a slight injury. So talk about, there's so much to hit on here. I'm just going to throw it over to you, and you tell us about guys come to you, 600 D1 players over your career. So this is an amazing thing that you've developed.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting training period in their life because these are guys that have always trained to play football games, and now they have, it depends on if they're going to the combine or if they're not going to the combine, they have a little more time. But 6, maybe 8 weeks to train, and it's really training for a track meet environment, which is very different, and you can, and you see a lot of times over the years, I see guys that are really, fantastic football players, but they lose all of their confidence in doing a stupid drill, like a 3-count, or it just gets in their head, and so it's a fun training time, but it's really taking them out of the mindset of being a football player and getting ready to do a few things really well. And it's something that I really enjoy, because it's something that I've done for 18 years now in training guys for the draft, and it's fun to be able to take guys that are very impressive athletes and to tweak some things and to build their abilities and mechanics in things that are very measurable. And as a former engineer, it's something I really kind of enjoy about training is, you can say, hey, well, he looks faster. Well, time him. Was he faster? It's subjective. Did he jump higher? Did he lift 225 more reps? So it's fun to kind of chase after those numbers. But we all know at the end of the day, those are, what they do at the combine, what they do at their pro day and the evaluation shows the potential of an athlete. Doesn't mean that person, is going to be a great football player. But at the same time, the process of what I'm hired to do is to get them ready to put their best foot forward on draft day. But I remember I was training Sherrick McManus for the draft, and Sherrick had an injury in training, and he wasn't able to run at all for scouts. He didn't run at the pro day, and the scouts like, well, you're not going to run. He's like, he had pulled his quad, and Bo Schembechler's son, who's a scout with the Chiefs, he came over. He's like, what would Sherrick have run? And if I were to put down a 4.4, would that be safe to say? And I knew from what he was doing in training, he probably could have run a 4.3, but I knew he'd run a 4.4. I said, yeah, you would be safe to do that. And he said, well, go, tell Sherrick that he's going to be fine. And he said, 90% of it is what they've already done on the field. And 10% of it is this last part, and he's shown that he's a football player. He should be get ready to play in the NFL, and that's kind of, I always remembered that, because as I train guys, if they, it's sort of like that kind of mindset of if your final exam is worth 90% of your grade, you're freaking out. It's 10% of your grade, and the reason why you go to the combine is because there's a lot of people who have been evaluating talent for a long time, and they think that you're one of the top 300, prospects, and that, you have a right to have confidence, I think. But, yeah, just kind of rambling there. But
that was good. So now we're going to talk about the combine because he's really started to touch on it. And I just want to say it goes on for 6 days at Lucas Oil Field in Indianapolis where the Colts play. It's the biggest collection and the largest gathering of NFL personnel you can ever imagine. There are not only NFL scouts, but senior VPs of player personnel staff, head coaches, assistants. It's the biggest thing in pro football. And the key is, take a guy like Coach Belichick. He is very, very involved in the combine in that process. He's very involved in the draft because he has a keen eye of judging talent. He can look at a guy on a tape and he can say,